Through my YouTube and book searches over the years, I have been increasingly interested in learning more about the Spanish-American War, the conflict that officially brought the United States on the world stage as a global power at the expense of an old one, Spain, and gaining new territories in the Atlantic and the Pacific Oceans, such as Cuba, Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Philippines. I have given guided tours and classes about this topic during my time as a tour guide and currently as a teacher. One thing that strikes me the most was the lack of knowledge, or ignorance for that matter, of the Puerto Rican campaign. Even though several books, documents, and primary sources of the campaign exist, it is not a campaign that is widely mentioned. For example, many YouTube channels mention the Philippines and Cuban campaigns, with certain details of the events, but only mentions Puerto Rico by name at the end, and that's it. A documentary of the war, created by History Channel, failed to mention the island even once in the entire run of that episode. In Season 2, Episodes 7 and 8 of the hit Spanish TV series Ministerio del Tiempo also fails to mention the island despite talking about Cuba and the Philippines to a certain extent. The list goes on, but I think I've made my case. After the war begins in April of 1898, the United States Navy begins its operations in the Pacific. For some time before hostilities broke out, the U.S. fleet led by Admiral Dewey was assembled in British Hong Kong. Their terms of staying were soon to expire and they had to move out, so they take advantage of the situation and on May 1st attacked the Spanish Pacific Fleet in Manila Bay and destroy it in a surprise attack. This was a surprising victory for the U.S. fleet, since it not engaged in a major war with the new armored cruisers. The United States would maintain control of the Pacific for the rest of the war. 2 weeks after their victory in Manila Bay, the Americans knew that in order to land troops for their Caribbean campaigns, they must destroy the Spanish Atlantic Fleet. In early May, the Americans intercepted a message from the Spanish that Admiral Pascual Cervera's Atlantic Fleet was making its way towards San Juan and Puerto Rico to reinforce its defenses. American Rear Admiral William Sanson took his North Atlantic Squadron, which consisted of about 11 ships. Ahead of the squadron was the USS Yale. This ship's mission was to scout ahead to locate the Spanish fleet. On May 10th, around 11 a.m., Spanish soldiers atop Castillo San Cristobal in San Juan, commanded by Captain Angel Rivero Mendez, spotted the vessel just north of the island. The Yale was not presenting any flag, which caused the Spanish to think twice before opening fire. Rivero sent a message to the governor, Lieutenant General Manuel Macias, asking for permission to fire a warning shot. The governor took about an hour to respond due to fears that if the vessel was not American, it would cause an international crisis. At 12 p.m., Macias gave permission to fire, but the vessel was out of range of the fort's guns, the famed Ordóñez cannons, which had a maximum range of 6 miles or 10 kilometers. Rivero ordered the shot to be fired anyways, and the incredible happened. The shot skidded on the water, causing that from the point of view of the ship, it looked like 2 shots instead of 1, which meant hostility. Soldiers and officers congratulated Rivero on being the one who fired the first shot of the war in Puerto Rico, but it would not be the last. On May 12 at 5 a.m., the lookout on the lighthouse of El Morro sighted silhouettes of ships heading towards San Juan. He warned his sergeant, and the latter warned other soldiers. As they looked to the west, they thought that Cervera's fleet had arrived, but soon will find out that it is not the case. At 5:17 a.m., the ships started opening fire on the fortifications, and soldiers panicked and scrambled to their positions. At 5:24 a.m., the first Spanish guns responded were those from Fort San Cristobal, which had its guns loaded since the USS Yale incident. Additional fire from different batteries across the city also began firing on the American ships. Sampson's strategy was the following: to move the ships in a circular formation to force the Spanish to constantly readjust their aim and constantly miss. Sampson did not account for Puerto Rico's strong waves, which caused 80% of their shots to miss their targets. As the sun rose, Rivero accounts in his diary the panic that ensued in the city during the attack. I have already mentioned that at the beginning of the bombardment, many peaceful inhabitants of San Juan ran to the outskirts of the city. The spectacle, seen from the top of San Cristobal, was painful. Old, sick, laid with their crutches, blind without guides, mothers with children by the hands and in their arms. The little ones all fled in motley droves, like a herd that disbands. The peasants who arrived that hour with their cargo of birds and vegetables turned around and at full speed took the road to Rio Piedras, and even one, believing himself to escape in a better way, abandoned his cargo and mount, trusting salvation to his own feet. Lieutenant Policarpo Echevarria, who was going through Puerta de Tierra towards San Jerónimo, used a horse-drawn cart and on its load of bananas galloped towards his castle. Pablo Ubarri's steam tram made frequent trips crowded with passengers, dragging in some more than 14 cars. The confusion on this train was huge because many people entered through the windows and others wanted to take suitcases and large packages with them. 2 unhappy women gave birth in the ditches of the road beyond the San Antonio Bridge. Others fled in lesser clothes, almost naked. After 3 hours of combat, Samson ordered a retreat. His main objectives were never fulfilled because he did not destroy Cervera's fleet and could not force the city to surrender. It was America's first major defeat in the war and Spain's first major victory. Cervera had taken a detour further south before arriving in the Caribbean when he found out that the Americans had intercepted the message and sailed for the Dutch Antilles. From there, he would sail to Santiago de Cuba. By the time the Battle of San Juan ended, the Americans had fired 1,360 shots, 133 from the Iowa, 187 from the Indiana, 313 from the New York, 99 from the Amphitrite, 155 from the Terror, 150 from the Montgomery, and 318 from the Detroit. According to Rivero, only 272 shots hit their target. The others missed or were misfires. They also suffered 9 casualties during the battle. 2 were killed and 7 were injured. The Spanish, on the other hand, only fired 441 shots. We do not have the numbers from each fort and battery. The Spanish suffered 41 military casualties, in which 2 were killed and 39 were injured. Among the civilian population, there were 5 civilians killed and 18 injured. Rivero states in his diary that the artillery in the city remained armed and ready in case the Americans tried again. It was not to be, since the North Atlantic Squadron continued to Cuba. The Battle of San Juan is one of the largest forgotten battles during the Spanish-American War. It was one of Spain's few major victories in this disastrous war for them. Despite this, the war would continue, but the city was safe. In the following months, San Juan will receive additional armaments, forcing the U.S. to rethink their invasion plans for Puerto Rico and change the island's history forever.